They told you freedom would come at 65, that if you played by the rules, studied hard, worked, long showed up on time, paid your dues, you'd one day be rewarded with what? A soft landing, leisure, a chance to finally exhale and begin living. You'd travel, read books, sip coffee by the sea and wake up with nothing but time. Retirement was sold as liberation, a golden chapter after decades of sacrifice. But what if that was never true? What if the entire story was a myth stitched together with just enough hope to keep you moving forward without ever asking where you were really going? What if retirement wasn't a destination but a distraction, an expertly designed mirage keeping you compliant and productive until the system no longer needed you? You weren't just promised freedom, you were conditioned to wait for it, to chase it like a finish line. And because everyone else was doing the same, your parents, your neighbors, your co-workers, you never thought to question it. You internalized the script, you followed the path, and then one day you arrive, 65, the long-awaited arrival, and it's quiet. There are no parades, no profound awakening, just silence, a blank calendar, a strange stillness you never prepared for. You're free, but oddly unanchored. You thought this would feel like arriving. Instead, it feels like disappearing. Because what no one told you is that the system was never preparing you for freedom. It was preparing you for obedience, for output, for roles and routines and repeatable functions. It trained you to become useful, not fulfilled. And when your usefulness had run its course, it handed you a pamphlet titled Freedom and expected you to find meaning in it. But how do you enjoy life if you were never taught how to live? You knew how to perform, how to optimize, how to climb and conquer. But no one showed you how to be still, how to be present, how to belong to yourself. Retirement then becomes not the beginning of life, but the absence of structure. The role is over, but there's no new one to replace it. The meetings stop, the deadlines vanish, and with them goes the sense of being needed. And beneath that vacuum, something more fragile begins to surface, the fear that maybe you traded your best years for a promise that was never real. Maybe what you were chasing was not freedom, but permission. Permission to stop, to feel, to rest, to exist without the weight of proving your worth. But freedom that arrives only after a lifetime of conformity isn't freedom at all. It's a soft exile, a quiet exit dressed up as reward. And once that truth sinks in, another more haunting question emerges. If you spent your whole life waiting for permission to live, did you ever really live at all? You were born into a story already in progress. Long before you took your first breath, the outline of your life had been drafted by hands you would never meet. It came without a title, without a narrator yet. Somehow you understood the script by heart. Go to school, get good grades, pick a career, work hard, earn enough, retire, rest, then die. No one asked you if you wanted this script. It was simply handed to you like a family heirloom, polished with tradition, reinforced by expectation, rewarded by applause when you followed it well. It didn't feel like control, it felt like purpose. And that's how the most powerful systems work, not by chains, but by stories. Not through force, but through the illusion of choice. You believed you were designing your life, but in truth, you were coloring inside lines drawn generations before you. From the moment you entered a classroom, the training began. You were taught to sit still, to raise your hand, to wait for permission. You learned how to memorize, not how to question, how to follow instructions, not how to follow your curiosity. This wasn't education, it was domestication, a quiet conditioning into roles the system needed filled. Your creativity was shaved down into compliance, your imagination tucked away in the name of structure. You didn't learn to think freely, you learned to perform predictably, and when you did it well, they called you successful. The transition into adulthood wasn't a leap into freedom, it was a seamless handoff from one institution to another. You clocked in, you clocked out. You measured your life in hours, worked tasks completed, and promotions earned. You learned to value yourself, not by your presence, but by your productivity. And slowly you began to forget. You forgot what it felt like to wake up without a to-do list. You forgot how to chase something without needing it to pay the bills. You forgot how to just be unapologetically, unproductively joyfully. But even as you followed the script, some part of you knew that the milestones felt hollow, that the titles didn't heal the ache. That success, as defined by others, still left you staring at the ceiling. Some nights wondering, is this it? Because the script was never written for your soul. It was written for the machine, a machine that needs workers, not wanderers, output, not introspection, conformity, not awakening. And to keep you running in place, it fed you just enough comfort to avoid revolt, but never enough fulfillment to feel free. So you became a character in a story that wasn't yours. You wore costumes, student, employee, manager, provider. Each role carried weight, expectation, identity. And you played them well, so well that one day you forgot it was just a role. You believed the performance was you. But here's the truth. They never wanted you to ask, who would you be if you stepped off the stage? If no one was watching, no boss, no spouse, no audience, no plan, what would you choose? What rhythm would you move to? What voice would you finally hear in the silence? The invisible script thrives in noise, in busyness, in distraction. But once you pause, once you question, once you turn your gaze inward, something begins to crumble. And from those cracks, something else begins to emerge. Not a new role, not a better plan, but the quiet, trembling awareness that maybe, just maybe, your life was never meant to be scripted at all. They told you retirement was a reward, a celebration, a sacred rite of passage for the obedient and the loyal. They gave you a cake, a speech, maybe even a plaque engraved with your name. But what you didn't realize at the time was that the ceremony wasn't about honoring your life's work. It was about quietly excusing you from the stage. Because retirement in its current form is not the beginning of freedom. It's the system's way of saying, you've served your function. We no longer need you. It sounds harsh, doesn't it? But if you peel back the surface, if you look beyond the smiling brochures and silver-haired couples strolling on sunlit beaches, you begin to see the truth. Retirement was never built for you. It was built for the machine, the institution, the economy, the flow of labor. Historically, the idea of retirement didn't even exist until the late 19th century. It wasn't born from compassion or concern for human dignity. It was economic strategy. In 1889, German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck introduced the first state retirement system not to honor the elderly, but to remove them from the workforce. They were too slow, too expensive, no longer efficient. And the system needed to make room for newer, cheaper labor. What began as a tool for productivity management slowly evolved into a societal norm, one wrapped in the language of grace and rest, but rooted in dismissal. Think about it. From the moment you're old enough to hold a pencil, you're trained to operate, to be productive, to be measured, to be useful. And when that usefulness declines, they don't say, you are complete. They say, you're done, and they call it a milestone. But it's not an arrival, it's an exit. And the cruelest part, the system never taught you how to exist beyond it. You spent your life moving to the beat of demands, meetings, quotas, emails, deadlines. These things gave you shape, a sense of rhythm, even meaning. They told you who you were. They gave your days structure, your name value, your presence purpose. Then almost overnight they vanish. The calendar clears, the inbox dries up, the nameplate comes down, and you are left standing in a silence you were never trained to navigate. It's not that you can't afford to retire, it's that you don't know who you are without the role you played. You were a teacher, a manager, an engineer, a provider. And in society's eyes, that was enough. But once the title disappears, once the function ends, what remains? Too often the answer is not much. Because when identity is built on function, the end of that function feels like death. A quiet death, yes, but a death nonetheless. One that doesn't make headlines, but that echoes inside the soul. It's no wonder so many retirees report feelings of depression, confusion, and profound loss. According to the National Institute on Aging, the rates of clinical depression rise sharply in the first year after retirement, not due to financial hardship, but existential disorientation. One man, a retired Boeing engineer, posted on Reddit, "I spent 40 years building planes. Now I wake up every day and don't know why. I realize I never actually lived. I just worked." And that sentence, "I just worked," says more than 1,000 financial plans ever could. It captures the haunting emptiness of a life measured only by output. We were told to strive, to climb, to achieve, but no one taught us how to simply be. And so when the striving ends, we don't feel peace, we feel vertigo. The ground falls out, the role dissolves, and suddenly we're not sure what's left. Retirement then becomes not a chapter of fulfillment, but a mirror. One that reflects back everything we postponed, everything we neglected, everything we silenced in the name of duty. And the longer we stare, the more we begin to see the deeper truth. We weren't dismissed because we were finished. We were dismissed because we no longer served a purpose in a system that values function over humanity. They called it freedom, but it was really just a gentle dismissal hidden behind a smile. It doesn't happen all at once. At first, it's subtle, almost imperceptible. You wake up later than usual, with no alarm to interrupt your dreams. There's no inbox screaming for your attention, no meetings, no tasks. The house is quiet. The air is still. You walk into the kitchen, pour your coffee and stare out the window as the world keeps spinning, without you. And at first it feels peaceful, like a long overdue rest. But then, in the stillness, something begins to shift, something you didn't expect. Not boredom, not regret. Something more hollow, a sense of unmooring, a quiet question that grows louder each day. Who am I now? Because for decades your name meant something more than just letters on an ID. It meant responsibility, relevance, structure, worth. You were needed. You had a place in the world. Your calendar was full. Your role was clear. But now you're a retired man, a retired woman, a former something. And though the title retired is supposed to sound noble, it feels like a closed door, like a name that says, you used to matter. What no one prepared you for is that you didn't just retire from a job, you retired from an identity, and without it, you're left drifting. Modern society is addicted to identity through function. You're not asked who you are, you're asked what you do. And from childhood, you internalize the equation, value equal role, worth output, identity equals utility. So you pick a lane. You become the engineer, the teacher, the entrepreneur, the nurse. You wear the badge with pride. You give it everything you have. You become so entangled in the role that eventually there's no separation left between the job and the self. And then one day, it ends. But you don't know how to turn it off. You don't know how to be someone else, because the someone else was never given space to exist. The meetings are over, but you still check your phone. The title is gone, but you still speak about yourself in past tense achievements. The pressure has lifted, but the tension remains coiled deep in your chest like a habit you can't unlearn. What do you do when the very thing that gave you structure now leaves you stranded? Most people never learned how to be without doing. Stillness feels dangerous. Rest feels like guilt. Joy feels unearned. This is the collapse not of status, not of income, but of self. You don't miss the meetings, you miss the meaning. You don't miss the job, You miss the certainty, the sense of direction, the feeling of being part of something, of mattering. And no retirement account, no beach house, no polished cruise brochure can fill that void. This is the truth financial advisors never tell you. Because this isn't about budgeting, it's about becoming. And becoming is terrifying when you've only been taught how to perform. According to the American Psychological Association, the first 12 months of retirement are often marked by a significant rise in depression, anxiety, and emotional disorientation. Not because people lack money or health, but because they lack purpose, they lack identity. A man who once oversaw multi-million-dollar contracts now stands in a supermarket aisle debating which cereal to buy and feels lost. A woman who managed a team of 40 people now hesitates to fill her day with anything not marked productive, because we were trained to measure our existence, to validate our lives through metrics, KPIs, promotions, applause, but no one gave us the tools to be without doing. So when the applause fades and the emails stop and the rhythm vanishes, what's left? A question, a space, a silence so loud it shakes your foundation. But here's the quiet miracle hidden in the collapse. What falls apart was never really you, it was the scaffolding, the armor, the script. And as it crumbles, a door opens, not to more roles, but to something raw, unfamiliar, and deeply human. The chance to remember who you were before the performance. You thought you were done with the machine. You believed that once you clocked out for the final time, once the retirement party was over, the badge handed in, the HR paperwork signed, that you were finally free. Free from the systems, the routines, the roles that dictated your every move for 40 years. But you weren't released. You were repurposed. You didn't escape the system. You simply stepped into a new one, because in the eyes of the machine you are never truly free. You are simply transitioning from worker to consumer. The moment you retire, a $1 trillion industry wakes up with fresh eyes on you, and it's not asking what brings you joy or who are you now. No, it's asking something far more strategic. How do we sell you the illusion of meaning now that your job is gone? The market for retirement is vast and meticulously engineered. Cruise packages, active living condos, financial planning seminars, retirement lifestyle coaches. The language is seductive. You've earned it. This is your time. Finally, live the life you've always dreamed of. But behind the curtain, the mechanics are familiar. This isn't freedom. It's consumption disguised as purpose and the product being sold. It isn't the trip or the home or the peace of mind. It's you. More precisely, your deep, aching desire to feel in control again. After decades of being told what to do, what to wear, where to be, how to behave, now you want agency. You want choice. You want to feel like your time belongs to you. And the market is ready. They sell you comfort because they know chaos terrifies you. They sell you plans because uncertainty feels like failure. They offer curated experiences because you were never taught how to create your own. The system whispers, here's how to retire well. But it never asks, do you even know what well means to you? It doesn't want you to reflect. It wants you to redirect your energy, your attention, your money toward its new targets. So you swap performance metrics for lifestyle goals. You trade business suits for leisure wear meetings, for travel itineraries, KPIs for bucket lists. And at first it feels exciting. You feel alive again. Until quietly the same anxiety creeps back in. Because it was never about the job. It was about the pattern. And the pattern remains. You're still measuring yourself, still seeking approval, still following a schedule that someone else designed. You didn't step off the stage, you just changed costumes. And that's the brilliance of the second lie. It feels reasonable, it feels earned. It doesn't look like control, it looks like lifestyle. But lifestyle can be just as imprisoning when it's sold to you instead of chosen by you. The financial advice industry, for example, isn't neutral. It's a business model. The same firms encouraging you to invest, save, and plan are collecting fees, commissions, interest on your dreams. They call it security, But what they're really selling is managed fear. Alan Watts once said, "The desire for security and the feeling of insecurity are the same thing." In other words, the more you chase stability, the more fragile you become. And what they never tell you is that true freedom, real embodied messy freedom, doesn't come from comfort. It comes from awareness. It comes from seeing the illusion and stepping outside of it. That doesn't mean you shouldn't travel or rest or enjoy the years ahead. It means that unless those choices arise from your inner compass, not a brochure, not a portfolio, you're still dancing to music someone else composed. Freedom isn't the cruise. It's why you booked it. Freedom isn't the beach house. It's how it makes you feel and whether you chose it or followed a script. Because the truth is the same machine that managed your labor now manages your leisure. And unless you wake up, it will consume your final decades with the same efficiency it consumed your prime. You thought you retired from the job, but what you need is to retire from the mindset. We were taught to wait, to delay joy, to defer presence, to postpone life itself until some future milestone whispered, now you've earned it." As children, we heard it first from our parents. Finish your homework first. Be patient when you're older, then you'll understand. In school, we were told to aim for the next grade. In university, we worked for the job. Once employed, we aimed for the promotion, then the mortgage, then the savings, then the elusive promise of retirement. A lifetime of someday, a lifetime of after this is over. And it never was. We became masters at delay, experts at survival. We learned how to endure, to prepare, to optimize, to store away everything precious for later. Later. That slippery horizon we never seemed to reach. We told ourselves, not yet. Once the kids are grown, once I've paid off the house, once things settle down. But life doesn't settle. It moves. Constantly. Quietly. Unapologetically. And as we waited for the right moment, the present became a hallway. Something to pass through, not to dwell in. We treated now like a staging area for later. And so we missed it. Again and again. This is not just philosophy. It is science. Behavioral psychology has a name for this delay, discounting our tendency to devalue present experience in favor of imagined future rewards. The more we defer gratification, the more our brains learn that now is never enough. That joy is always somewhere else. That real life is perpetually out of reach. And over time, this becomes a disease, not of the body, but of the soul. We forget how to be here. We lose the muscles of presence. We don't know how to stop, to savor, to just be. And by the time we retire, by the time we finally have the time, we don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to live without purpose being defined for us. We don't know how to feel without permission. We don't know how to be free without a map, because we've spent decades rehearsing, practicing for a life that never began. And suddenly, when the curtain finally lifts, we don't recognize ourselves without the script. The great tragedy isn't that we waited too long to enjoy life. It's that we were conditioned to believe we had to. We believed rest had to be earned. That joy was irresponsible. That presence was unproductive. And so we praised hustle. We glorified busyness. We shamed slowness. We traded spontaneity for structure, curiosity for convenience, until all that remained was a calendar filled with things we didn't choose. Alan Watts warned us of this very trap. He said, "Stop measuring your life. Live it." But in a culture that rewards production, stillness feels like failure. So we filled every moment. We bought the self-help books. We made the 5-year plans. We optimized our sleep, our workouts, our calendars, until even leisure became a task. And beneath all of it, we waited for permission, for peace, for the day when everything would make sense. But that day never came, because it doesn't exist. There is no final destination, no perfect alignment of circumstances where life suddenly becomes real. There is only now, this breath, this moment. this heartbeat. And if we cannot find life here, we will not find it later, because later is just another mirage. A mirage we've been chasing for decades, a moving goalpost designed not by malice but by misunderstanding. No one told us that life isn't something you plan, it's something you notice. It's not something you earn, it's something you allow. And once you see this clearly, the whole illusion collapses. You realize the system didn't just steal your time, it stole your presence. It taught you that living comes after achievement, never before. But you were never meant to live on delay. You were meant to live awake.